Sweet. We're live with Kelly and Juliet Starrett, co-founders of the Ready State. It's awesome to have you all here.
Thanks for having us, John.
Absolutely.
We're stoked.
Yeah. So for those out there who don't know what the Ready State is, can you give us a little overview of what y'all are up to?
Yes, Kelly would love to do that.
This is a game we play where
It's a game we play
who
where,
has
like,
the
who
best
gets it?
who has the best elevator pitch. In short, we got our start in high performance human function, whether we're talking about Fortune 500 companies or the military or the Olympics, universities. And we really started to see best practices there. You know, Juliet is a world champion athlete. I'm a physical therapist. We both owned a gym together for a gazillion years. And what we realized is that high performance sport is really a wonderful place to serve as a test kitchen or a teaching hospital or like a laboratory. So the Ready State is the promise of sport and performance, which is taking the best practices, good practices, where people can learn to take care of themselves, feel better, move more efficiently, recover from a hard training session, and do that for themselves. And so the Ready State really is a way of saying, hey, how can we help you achieve your available human potential today? Whether that's being in less pain or being durable for 100 years or having your hips function better so you can go smash your soul cycle class. It really doesn't matter to us. And it turns out the body is the body, and it's pretty stable construct. It doesn't matter who you are. So we've taken these lessons and we've tried to apply them to the society that matters the most, like us mortal people, you know, people who are working jobs and have kids and still feel like we want to get a little bit more out of our bodies. How'd I do?
Good job, baby. That was great.
I thought that was great too. I'm excited to dive into what those practices are. But first, you know, you two are married, right? Like how did y'all meet and come together to be on this wild journey of building the Ready State and building, I think, a family too? I think, is that your daughter in the background?
Yeah, we have two daughters. I'll start and then Kelly can add some color commentary, but we actually met in the year 2000. We were both competing as professional whitewater paddlers. And we didn't live in the same place. I was living in San Francisco. Kelly was living in Colorado. We were on separate teams and we met actually at a world championship event. And I guess I could say the rest is history, but, you know, we've been working together and married and doing, you know, raising kids and doing all that, basically since 2005. My background is as an attorney. But we started our first business, which was San Francisco CrossFit in 2005. And so, you know, we've certainly had to figure out how to make sure we work together and have a healthy, happy marriage. But, you know, we're almost 17 years into running two businesses. So we think we've done a pretty good job of figuring that out so far. And now for us, it would be weird to not work together. We would feel weird if we went off to our separate day jobs and came home and sort of had like a recap. It's just become totally normal for us to work together. So, but yeah, I mean, we feel really lucky. I think one of the reasons it works is that we are sort of yin and yang in terms of our skill sets. Kelly's sort of like the 30,000 foot big picture, visionary type, even though it does hurt me a little bit to say that. And I'm kind of the operational person, right? Like I manage the team and run the operations and do the strategy, business strategy.
Juliet's a CEO through and through, you know, and so it doesn't matter, as everyone knows in business, especially in health business, you know, you have to get people's attention. You have to fight for their eyes and viewership, and then also have something that is cogent and holds together. And I think one of the issues we're facing today, especially in this attention society, where even now Instagram is saying no longer than 60 seconds. You know, how can we begin to capture people's imagination quickly and serve them in a way that, you know, rises above the rest of the fray? And, you know, I think some of our traditional health models have been sort of subjugated by entertainment. Fitness is entertainment, health is entertainment trends. And so, you know, Juliet's expertise is running this incredible business and managing other people so that we can actually serve people and people can actually have sort of the attention and the tools to be able to take a crack at it themselves. So, you know, we're pretty good team. And just if you are in any relationship, theoretically a marriage of some kind, you're already working together. So you already know a lot about that. So I find it really a strange conversation when people are like, you work together? I'm like, well, don't you have kids? You guys work together.
Right.
You just work in a different way.
Yeah. Well, how do you do that? You all went from gyms to an app, a mobile platform. What are some of the lessons that you've had to learn in terms of, going from having the physical audience present and being able to walk them through an exercise or some sort of training versus now having to do that and craft those types of messages in a digital environment?
It's important to recognize that we didn't choose one or the other. So, we set out to have a training environment. We wanted to have an Olympic training center for non-Olympians, have all of the best coaching in the world so that you could enhance and do what you wanted to do, recover, physical therapy, the whole thing. Doesn't matter what your sport or activity was. And we really set out to sort of achieve that. And simultaneously, nascent, emergent internet starts to pop its head up. We started making content about what we knew and what we were doing in 2010, really. But we'd already been teaching courses. We'd already been kind of serving greater coaches. But we started our first iteration of our business called Mobility WOD in 2010. And what we started to do was put content out in the world. And the iPhone didn't even have a video camera yet. So our virtual business was a virtual business before there was such a thing as a virtual business. And simultaneously, as Juliet can talk about further, we were one of the first businesses, certainly in fitness, to commoditize and monetize their
content
on their online content. It was like the New York Times, and then
I'll draw a line in the sand and say we were 100% the first business in health and fitness to try a subscription membership model. We launched on May 1st of 2013
under the Mobility WOD.
Under Mobility
WOD,
which is workout of the day for everyone. Mobility workout
of the day. So we launched that. We'd been making free content on YouTube for almost 3 years at that time. And we knew if we wanted to keep it alive, we needed to figure out a way to monetize it. And I'm not exaggerating. Everybody thinks because subscription models are just everywhere and everyone's subscribed to 50 things these days. In 2013, it was the New York Times and a couple of other like journalistic empires and porn. And those were the only things that you could subscribe. Those were the only areas in which on the internet you had to pay to enjoy content. That was everything up to that point was free. And so we were really early adopters. We realized that, from our YouTube experience, that there was this big audience and market of people who wanted to spend some time on their own, on their phone or their laptop or their iPad or whatever, and engage with content. And we felt like our content had some value. So we launched a $7.99 monthly product in 2013.
And simultaneously, we were always having our test kitchen because we started in a physical presence. So we kind of got to play both ends. You could see us in person, and we simultaneously had this virtual business, which allowed us to transcend, our physical boundaries in the United States. We have a huge international sort of, following isn't the right word, but we serve and work with a lot of coaches across, almost every continent. And we get to teach there as well. So I think we've taught in every continent except Antarctica because there's no one to teach there yet. So what happened was that we saw that this was an opportunity to scale and also weave together this really powerful and seemingly disparate strength and fitness wellness community. So that's how we started. We only closed the gym recently, back about a year ago, because of the COVID, because rents were kind of crazy in San Francisco. So after running our business for nearly 16 years, having brick and mortar, we were able to focus our time full time, but on the ready state, which is what we've evolved to. But it should be noted, we're not just a virtual company because we work. I just was in Dallas this weekend teaching. We work in universities and sport platforms. And I don't know how many friends we have who have gyms and training centers, but it's a lot. And so what we have is actually just more of a decentralized model where our coaches and staff and our training happens internationally. We'll travel to Moscow this year.
I think we also realized too, way back when we, started doing digital related work is that we could amplify our message, right? It was a way, right? In San Francisco, it's like we always had, we had a big, huge functioning gym with 350 members. And, over the years, like tens of thousands of clients came through the doors of that place. But still, it's a whole different thing to be able to put a video on YouTube and have, 1 million viewers on a random video about icing, right? So we realized early on that this was a way to sort of amplify what we were doing beyond sort of the four walls of a brick and mortar.
I'd love to pause for a second, even like maybe backtrack, because when people think about like CrossFit, you think of something more intense, right? I haven't done too much CrossFit. I've taken a couple classes, but you think of it more of as like like a physical activity, whereas y'all have kind of moved into like mobility, like what you do pre-workout and post-workout in order to maintain your fitness or to make sure that you don't get injured. Am I right to assume that? Like, how did you guys move from like being like the actual thing that people are doing to what you're doing around fitness and exercise in order to make sure that you can do it for longer and healthier?
So I'll start with that one, and then Kelly can add. But we, in addition to running a gym, we actually also had an in-house physical therapy clinic, and we also were really one of the. This is a pretty common practice now, but we were one of the first, if not the first, gym to say, "Hey, there's a there's a market for people, especially injured athletes or people who have common aches and pains who they don't have a catastrophic injury. They haven't torn their ACL, so they don't need to go do little exercises at a physical therapy clinic, but they want to work with a physical therapist who can get them back on a path to actually training." So Kelly actually left his traditional physical therapy job in 2007 and brought his clientele inside our gym. And that's
so Kelly's a trained PT. I guess I didn't pick that up.
Doctor of physical therapy. And one note I want to make, because I think it's important, and I need to give Kelly props on this. Kelly is the reason why everybody uses the word mobility. He alone should be fully credited with converting the word mobility into being this thing we all talk about, doing it before or after we work out or whatever. I see it on all these blogs, mobility this. So, he was obviously a physical therapy student, practiced physical therapy, but what he saw was that there was like stretching and other words used, but they didn't really sort of complete the picture of what people needed to do to take care of their bodies. And up to that point, mobility, like if you search for the word mobility on the internet in 2007, it was like wheelchair companies. No one in sports performance, in gyms, in everyday practice, in their homes was using the word mobility. So I just have to give Kelly props for that, because I think that gets sometimes lost in the crazy internet. Like lately, everyone's like, mobility has become so popular. I'm like, we've been popularized and talking about mobility literally since 2007. So it's like not a new thing, at least not for us. So I just have to get that in there. That's just a thing that I have to point out. But what I will say is what started Mobility WOD, which has now become the Ready State for your listeners. We changed the name of the company in 2019. But it started because Kelly was seeing client after client in his in-gym physical therapy clinic. And largely he was seeing like the same 7 problems. And most of these problems in his mind were things that if people understood how their body worked and had a few simple tools to take care of themselves, they wouldn't even need to be seeing him. Now, again, we're not talking about catastrophic injuries where people break a bone or tear an ACL, right? Like that's a different thing. We're talking about the typical aches and pains that everybody has when they are athletic in any way, shape, or form. I mean, that means Pelotoning to CrossFitting, you name it. And so that was how Mobility WOD was born, because Kelly thought, wow, all these people are taking 2 or 3 hours off of work. They're paying me $300 an hour to come to my clinic and see me for an appointment. And really what they should be doing is rolling their calf on a lacrosse ball. So that was how Mobility WOD was born, is that he saw that people weren't unique special flowers. All their problems weren't unique and special. They all didn't need to go spend tons of time and money seeing a practitioner. That really the problem was people literally had no idea how their bodies worked, and they had no idea how to take a crack at fixing their bodies. So that's actually why we started making all these free YouTube videos because we thought, well, shoot, people have literally no idea that, like, you know, I don't know. I could think of 1,000 examples, but really, like, we were in the dark ages in terms of sort of common knowledge about how your body works, how it's supposed to work, and how to take care of it. And so that's how this all got started, was actually, you know, so that's why those two businesses are so interconnected, right? The Mobility WOD was really born out of the gym and the in-house physical therapy clinic in the gym, you know, what we saw there.
Let me add that, you know, one of the problems is that we had a few movement screens that were okay, but not connected to our physical practices. And so our old model until very recently was I would do a bunch of exercise, and because I was fitnessing, and I'll put that in quotation marks, I was breathing hard and shredding and burning, and it was really intense. And then something would start to hurt, and I would ignore it, or you would take ibuprofen or THC or, you know, whatever it is you needed to manage it. And then it would either go away if you backed off a little bit, or it would get so bad you would seek help. That was our model. And it wasn't connected to your sleep. It wasn't connected to your nutrition, wasn't connected to your hydration, and it certainly wasn't connected to your movement efficiency and movement economy. Do you have access to your body's positions? And I think when we define exercise, and if I ask people to exercise, they're like, it's good for your heart, it's good for your lungs, right? You get muscles. Those are all aspects of physiology. But the root of what it is we do when we train is we train positions. You take a fundamental position, hip flexion, hip extension, and then we challenge those positions with different modalities. It might be cardiorespiratory demand, it might be metabolic demand, it might be load, it might be speed. And so what ends up happening then is that ultimately, if you can't access your position, I'm talking about normative baseline range of motion, not Simone Biles, hypermobile gymnast, right? That's what I'm talking about. I'm saying that every physician, every chiro, every physical therapist on the planet agrees within about 5 degrees of what everyone's hip should do. These are your baseline ranges of motion. And what we've seen is people have gotten very sophisticated about their SaO2 and respiration rate,
Heart
rate variability, all of this, right? And they know, I'm like, is 120/80 good blood pressure? They're like, nah, it's okay blood pressure. It's the normative value of beginning of health, or you have a problem. It's not good blood pressure. It's not like an athlete or healthy. But I'm like, well, how much should your hip move? And they're like, I have no idea. And then I'm like, well, what is a movement? Because laying on your table and moving your knee to your chest is not the same thing as the expression of what you're supposed to do as a human. And what we've seen is that we have not given anyone sort of these movement vital signs or access to understanding what their movement minimums should be. What should a human being be able to do? Well, it turns out when you put people into a formal strength and conditioning program where they're moving their bodies in a complete way, exposing themselves to full normative range, you suddenly have a really excellent diagnostic tool where you can understand it. As my mother-in-law said a long time ago, very wisely, as I explained all this to her, it makes the invisible visible. So what we're able to do is say, hey, I see that you are compensating, or you can't perform a full range movement with good control, because mobility is having the tissue extensibility. You have the tissues that allow you to express range. And then the other half of that is the movement control technique, which is why there's technique in everything. And why suddenly, if you just strip out the technique and everyone does, you know, hip sled machines, right, and bicep curls on the machine, we don't get the kinds of function and skill that we know required to be human. So what our work really is, if we boil it down to, is restoring people's ability to have access to their own native range of motion. Their thing that they were given through evolution, the thing that, you know, through 2.5 million years of being on the planet, the shoulder is the shoulder, the hip is the hip. The only difference is the length of your femur or the length of my femur, how wide I am, right? How like thick my vertebrae are. Those small variations all aggregate into the same movement expressions. But what we haven't done is told people, hey, why can't you squat all the way down? Why do you fall over if you're trying to lower yourself to the ground? Why can't you sit cross-legged? Why don't you have any hip extension? So what we've tried to do, and when we're trying to untangle this Gordian knot of performance, is we talk about restoring people's positions, exposing their tissues to to these shapes and positions so they become more durable. And then simultaneously, that turns out to be a really good way to help people stay pain-free and regain their pain-freeness by being able to move efficiently.
I just have one more thing to add too. I think the other thing that we focused on over the years, and we sort of backed into this, is trying to help people understand how their environment is impacting their physiology. Like one example I think of is, this would happen like all the time at our physical therapy clinic. Someone would literally be in the waiting room with their neck bent over at a 90-degree angle in the worst posture you've ever seen on their phone, waiting to see one of our physical therapists. And it would be like, guess the problem, right? And it's like, oh, this person's here because they have neck pain.
Or their shoulder doesn't function.
Or their shoulder doesn't function. And you're like, literally, you just see them sitting in the waiting room and you're like, well, no wonder. But we haven't taught people to get that connection between their environment and how their body feels.
And how their body moves.
Which is why we also wrote a book on sitting and how sitting can be problematic for people because we're doing it 16 hours a day and then trying to stand up and go run a marathon. So we sort of had to back into this environmental piece. We didn't sort of start thinking in those terms. What we realized is that people really have no understanding of the connection of a lot of their behaviors and the environment they're in. Like an environment would be your office where you're sitting in a chair all day. No real connection between those things and how their body feels. Real like shock that they have neck pain and not saying, I don't understand why I have neck pain. And it's like, well, you're on your phone with your head at a 90-degree angle.
And let me expand on that, because you should be able to sit on your phone and put your neck at 90 degrees. But if suddenly you've become sensitized to that position, that's a problem. So the problem with the human is that we are so durable and our bodies are so miraculous that we can buffer just about anything for a really long time. And then suddenly, if something starts to hurt or we start to have a behavior or we're not able to access a position, we get confused because we're like, but I've always done this. And it hasn't been a problem until now. And so one of the things we're trying to help people realize is that we're looking at restoring the best function to the body. We teach people to move at the highest expression of human movement, which comes to us down through the physiology tells us what the most stable position for the shoulder is. But B, that's the same technique that we use to hit a tennis racket or pull in the swimming pool. Or if you've ever gone to yoga class, yoga is genius. Yoga expresses these things slowly with breathing. But Joseph Pilates was onto the same thing. Kettlebells are onto the same thing. Here is the way to train out of these fundamental positions. But one of the things that Juliet is really pointing at is that we're continuing to see a significant mismatch between human, person, and environment. We're not moving enough during the day. We don't get enough sunshine. We don't feel like we're in a community and tribe. We are smashing ourselves with caffeine and then hitting the brakes with alcohol and THC. We don't sleep enough. We don't have access to our range of motion. We eat really crappy foods and are hypohydrated. And all of a sudden, what you have is a really stressed brain, a physiology that's existing in an environment that really isn't conducive to decongestion or movement or loading. And all of a sudden, when the system starts to express or throw an error message, we don't even know where to begin. So it's important that we're not just saying mechanics are the end all be all. We have to understand the environment in which you live. And that's how that thing impacts your physiology at a base level. So if you went to yoga and your knee stopped hurting, well, one of the things I can say was, well, maybe you felt happy in yoga and all of a sudden your knee didn't hurt anymore, right? That can be as simple as that. Oh, you started eating micronutrients and getting more protein and drinking some water, right? That can change your gut biome. All this, but plus you started to expose your tissues into their normative shapes and ranges. If you jump into a yoga class and you get your butt kicked, it's because you don't have access to the things a human should be able to do.
We really went far afield on that question, John.
Cheers.
No.
That's all we think about. We're obsessed.
No, I know it's
because
so
let me
good.
just say.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is like two big things I took away from that. One, at the beginning is like we are spending way too much time and energy. I'm echoing a little bit.
We've got you fine.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So we're spending way too much time and energy thinking about these like details that are very much in the clouds, in the weeds, whereas like we're missing the foundational principles that we need in order to stay happy, healthy, and mobile.
Which
and then
aren't
the second,
sexy
yeah,
and not easily commoditized.
yeah, they're not. It's hard to make that fun and digestible because it's like science. It's not instant gratification. It takes
consistency.
listening, and it takes consistency. It's not easy. And then the second part is like really rebooting the entire system to focus in the right places, and environment, movement, diet, all those things are a part of that. What do you both think needs to happen, maybe outside of the ready state itself, right? The ready state is one part of that. The work that you two are doing is one important piece of that. But where else do you see the most need and room for innovation within the wellness space that is less focused on, the glamorized Instagram likes, and is more focused on what people need to like learn in order to feel well?
Let me set this up for Juliet. We're all
Sure.
arguing about what the fastest route is up Everest and which tools we should take, right? Meanwhile, no one's at base camp. Base camp is empty. So that's what we need to get everyone to base camp. Then we can talk about the fastest way up Everest.
Yeah, I mean, I even struggle to use the word innovation, because I think, one of my challenges in our space right now is, if I look at the health and fitness business, in terms of like any available metric of how we're doing as a society, we're getting a solid F, right? Like the way I like to describe it is we're all of us who are into health and fitness. If you think of us in like this vertical, right? We've done a really good job of making ourselves and our friends who are in this vertical better. And we've totally left out people. I mean, when Kelly and I were kids, we had a 1 in 4,000 chance of getting diabetes. And now my kids have a 1 in 4 chance of getting diabetes. And that is a part that is separate from socioeconomic class, right? So that's not just whatever. I'll just let that sit. But what I'm saying is, we're doing a horrible job as an industry actually making meaningful change in a broad way in people's health and fitness. So I think what's innovative is, how do we get ourselves out of this vertical where we're making people who are already in the vertical better with stupid things that don't really matter, and actually think about how we can broaden the net and bring other people in and actually make larger scale physical transformation in our whole society. I mean, that's to me true innovation. And on the other point, we really like this phrase base camp. I mean, to us, to me, you have to earn your right to track things like your heart rate variability. Like, you don't get to track your heart rate variability unless you're sleeping 8 hours a night, eating at least 800 grams of fruits and vegetables, exercising 4 or 5 days a week, walking 12,000 steps, and taking care of your movement health by way of mobilizing. Like, to me, if you can check all those boxes, then you get to earn your right to care about your heart rate variability, because until then, you aren't even at base camp. So if you're at base camp, then you earn the right to like sleep in some weird pod and give yourself gabapentin injections or whatever people are doing. Like, that's all like to me, that stuff is just noise unless you're at base camp. So to me, the innovation is, how do we stop thinking of stupid, gimmicky fitness things and actually look outside our little teeny vertical and bring other people in? Because we're getting an F at that. Like, industry-wide, we're getting an F at that.
And really, let's expand
How
on
do we do that?
Well, what we're going to have to do is say, look at the pantheon of problems: diabetes, obesity. We're 70% obese in America, right? A big piece of research came out again suggesting that, yes, of course, body mass index and fatness matters, of course, but it matters more in terms of your total health, not to focus on losing fat, but to move more. And so I think fundamentally we fail to appreciate that we are movement beings. We are beings of movement. That's why you have a nervous system. And so what Juliet is proposing, you heard in there, is, hey, let's get you moving more. Let's take care of the fundamentals of some of these things. when some of the research that we're supporting and working with Cal Berkeley is looking at 4th and 5th graders right now, and they're understanding and looking at their total movement in the day. What we're seeing is that kids aren't moving much more than 2,000 or 3,000 steps a day. Plus, they don't sleep. Plus, they don't even know how much they should sleep or how much they should move. So what we're seeing is that we keep layering very complex behavior solutions on top of complex biocycles, emotional, physical problems in a very sophisticated physiology. So what we're going to have to think differently is how, and we take this from our training environment, how do you constrain a behavior so you do the right thing? So this is the first level of intervention. So let me give you a couple examples. One, if I see you doing a burpee and you jump and land and your feet are turned out and your arches collapse, and you can't control that and land in a good position, then for me, you win the prize of getting to do burpees with your feet together. And so suddenly you have to jump and land and have your feet together. And before you can stand up, you have to have your heels on the ground. And so what I do is I constrain the movement choices so that I get a better outcome. Another example of movement behavior constraint is that if I don't want to eat cookies, I shouldn't have cookies in the house. If my daughters bake cookies or Rice Krispie treats, I'm going to smash them all until they are gone and eradicated. So it's easier for me not to have to make that choice, right? That's a really simple choice. If we do things like say, no one is allowed to drive their child within a mile of school, you have to walk, all of a sudden you start to see that, oh, well, what we've done is incentivize people to do the right thing. They have to walk more. We could put them mile walking every day. The kids have to walk a period, they have to walk for an hour during a class period. And what you'll see suddenly is that if we start to think differently about the problems, you know, we just heard Tiffany Haddish talk about going back into LA and starting grocery stores, right? Teaching people how to cook. That's the kind of level change we're at now, because we're going to miss and lose a generation of people who've been tricked and saturated with sugary drinks and too much movement and too much entertainment. And unfortunately, the human body requires some physical input. So if we take Matt Walker, for example, who wrote, you know, this great book on sleeping, he points out that, you know, we've been around for 2.5 million years, and really the modern human is 10,000 years old. Sleeping is not a good use of our time. Yes, we consolidate and it's vital and all those things, but we cannot protect ourselves. We cannot reproduce. We cannot be interactive. It's a really weird time. But in 2.5 million years of evolution, do you think that if we could have gained a 10% efficiency by cutting off 10% of our sleep, that would have made us a more successful animal on the planet? But it turns out we still need to sleep 7 hours as a minimum and 8 hours ideal if you're under stress or training hard. So why are we thinking that you can get away with sub 5 hours of sleep night after night if 2.5 million years of evolution has shown us that this is the minimum sleep we need to be thriving animals? So those are the level of thinking we need to do. We need to start constraining behaviors and think about systems that encourage us to do the things that our bodies need to do.
And I'm also going to take this as a moment to plug what you are doing in your work, because you actually are trying to reach outside this vertical with what you're doing in your company, right? You're actually trying to reach like the regular person who may not use the word athlete to describe themselves, definitely wouldn't fall into this health and fitness vertical, right? Like you're trying to create opportunity for those kind of people to actually feel welcomed and have like these base camp practices be accessible to them. You know, like Kelly and I have gotten so reasonable in our old age. Like literally people think because we owned a CrossFit that we're like going to pro CrossFit the rest of our lives. Like, you know what we think about exercising? Our whole entire view about exercising can be summed up in these 2 sentences. Do something that you love that you will actually do. Now, that's wide ranging. I mean, I don't care if that's Zumba or Peloton or walking or gardening or CrossFit or weightlifting. Like we could literally care less. What we know is that humans need to move more, and they're only going to do things they enjoy doing that they're actually going to do. So we completely, like, we've become totally agnostic. And so one of the things I think it's cool about what you're doing is that you're giving people a lot of choice, because people do need choice, right? Not everybody wants to Peloton, and not everyone wants to CrossFit, and not everyone wants to do this. And, you know, some people are going to do mobility work. Other people are going to relate more to yoga, right? So I think we have to create opportunities, but I think we really need to keep a mind of like, wait, like when we're going outside this real health and fitness vertical, like, we need to be talking to people about the basics. Like, let me give you an example. Kelly and I love to sit in our sauna and ice bath. We are not going to suggest that your average non-athletic person do that. It's not accessible to them. It feels weird.
Doesn't
scale. It's expensive. Like this is a cool thing we do because we're in this world. But like, if we're talking to, you know, a big corporation about what their employees should do for their health and wellness, 100% we are not even going to mention that, because
sauna's for everyone.
Yeah,
everyone is sauna.
Right, like it's great. Like, that'd be great, right? But that's not accessible to people. So we're really trying to
I love that.
World. Like, what can you actually do? What can people do?
And what we're starting to realize is, who are the stakeholders here? As long as we have an insurance-based system that is predicated on an employer being responsible for the health of the people that work with them, then it is in the employer's best interest to take care of the health of their employees. Not only does it impact the bottom line, but we're coming to see that it's a real competitive advantage in terms of retaining people, having less absenteeism, less presenteeism, less effectiveness, or more effectiveness, so people can belong and be healthy and not have colds and back pain. Look, let me give you a little case study. Berkeley PD, the Berkeley Police Department. If one officer goes down with back pain, it throws the whole budget out. They can't hire a new police officer. That officer goes down, and now everyone gets overtime to fill in for that one thing, to fill in for that injured officer on disability. And guess what? The budget is shot. They can't move forward. They can't progress. They can't train. They can't do more outreach. So it's in the office's best interest to try to have a workforce that is more robust and more durable. And it just turns out we're not thinking in those terms. So you can do the right thing for the wrong reason. And the right thing for the wrong reason here is, I'm going to have a better healthcare plan to take care of my people so that it costs me less in the long haul. Morally, we should be doing the right thing for the right reason. We care that we want people to be 100 years old, and they're going to be 100 years old. Someone just passed away at 127 years old. And so I think we as humans, because we're so durable and we live in this momentary society of 15 seconds on TikTok, we fail to appreciate that this game that we're playing lasts 100 years, and how functional and durable and how much access you have and how well you want to move and how you feel is really going to matter from 40 to 100.
Well, and I just to add, if you went out and like interviewed random people on the street and said like, hey, do you want to live to 100? And everyone would say yes. And then if you ask the second question of, well, do you want to live to 100, but the last 20 years of your life are going to be shit and you're not going to move or have coherence or be able to move around, 100% of them would say no, thank you. Right. So it's like none of us want to be like stuck in a body and with a brain that aren't functioning. And that's what's happening because, you know, people are not putting money in the bank on these really base camp practices. So that's what we've really gone also far afield on what the Ready State does. But the Ready State now does this because, you know, we have backed into this, realizing that, you know, we're contributing this, you know, sort of movement mechanics mobility piece through the Ready State. But we also see that we can't really do what we do without talking about these other base camp health practices, because it is all connected.
And these base camp health practices are the roots of every performance environment we've ever been in. So at the highest levels of the military, and I'm talking about elite military forces, when people have sleep problems, the first thing that we do is prescribe more walking so they can accumulate enough non-exercise activity fatigue so they actually feel like they want to go to sleep. So what we fail to kind of appreciate is how interconnected and how tightly coupled all of these behaviors are.
You know, Kelly, it sounds like you're, you know, the visionary that's on the floor and behind the camera doing this mobility training. I'm sure you spend a lot of more time than you'd like on your computer as well. But then for someone like Juliet as the CEO, I'm sure you spend a little bit more time on the computer behind the screen. I'm curious, what does your mobility and training, mobility and training, and how do you balance that with your work? Like, when do you take a break? When do you stand up? When do you sit? Do you get up and get on your foam roller in the middle of the day? How do you make sure that you're getting the right balance of that as you're building a company that's pushing other people to get that balance?
Yeah, so we think about this. We have this concept that we like to call the 24-hour duty cycle, which is how we sort of think about our day. And what we try to do, and one of the things that we I think helps us as people in this business, and also in our ability to reach beyond sort of the health and fitness vertical, is that, like, you know, Kelly and I are not like wealthy celebrity people who have a lot of people doing things for us. Like, we're just normal people who work a lot of hours and are raising 2 kids. And, you know, we don't spend our days, you know, training all day and sitting in the sauna, and like, we're working. Exactly. Like, I'm in front of my computer for long hours of the day. So the way we try to think about this is like, what are the times of the day where we can control what we can control? So I'll talk about like my typical day. You know, I usually train in the mornings, because if I don't do that, then I lose my chance or my motivation. It's one of those two things. You know, sometimes by 6 o'clock at night, I usually train like in the 6:30, 7 o'clock time frame.
On your own?
No, I train with a group of women on the regular, and I also ride my mountain bike, but that's almost always with a group as well. Cool. So I'm usually mountain biking 2 or 3 times a week, and like doing something that resembles CrossFit 3 times a week, and then taking a day off. And, you know, and I also, that's when I really try to focus on like, what vegetables and fruits am I going to eat for the day, and making sure that I pack a lunch that I take to the office where I have a lot of vegetables and fruits, because again, I'm still at home. I can control what I can control, right? If I leave for the office without a lunch, then I'll end up eating like a protein bar and some takeout food or whatever. So I really like, those are the things that I really like to do in terms of controlling my day, is like get a workout in and pack a lunch, eat a breakfast and pack a lunch that are good and healthy and involve a lot of micronutrients. Because then if my day gets away from me through the workday, then, you know, it is what it is. I also do most of my mobilizing actually right at the end of my training session, because that works well for me. Although we recommend a lot of people do it at night while they're Netflixing. You know, I am obsessed with trying to get 12,000 steps a day. So sometimes I have to put my headphones in and take my phone calls while I'm walking around. Sometimes I just go for little walks. We actually have like a treadmill in our office, so I'll walk on our treadmill. You know, I do a mix of sitting and standing as I work throughout the day. So, you know, I try to buy a
treadmill desk. Can you work?
We don't have no treadmill desk, no treadmill desk. But we have all our offices and our homes have many places where we can stand and work. So, you know, I'm probably like 70-30 or 60-40 standing versus sitting.
I like to work on the ground. For example.
Kelly sits on the floor. But really, we try to set up, the reason we call it 24-hour duty cycle is we basically feel like there's these 2 big periods for working people that you can control your day, which is in the morning before you go to work, and then, you know, kind of right at night before you go to bed. Because often for parents, you're making dinner and cooking dinner and helping kids with homework, right? So you're not really even in control of that like early evening part of your life. So we really try to control that morning, where we're like making sure we have like a good food situation, good exercise situation. And then, you know, if we're sitting in front of the TV at night, Netflixing, we're sitting in the Normatec boots or foam rolling, or sitting on the ground, which is like a skill that people don't have, is being able to get up and down off the ground. So that's how we try to think of it, is like, where are these times in our day where we can actually focus on and take care of our like general health practices? But those are the big things. Trying not to sit all day at work, trying to get 12,000 steps a day, training 5 or 6 days a week, eating vegetables and fruits. And then we really also protect our sleep. Like, we are really obsessed with protecting our sleep. We say no to like a fair bit of social functions like that we could otherwise go to, because we want to get, you know, focus on getting 8 or more hours of sleep a night. So those are really like the basic things we do. You know, like I said before, the only kind of out there thing we do is we do love to sauna and ice bath. Like, we add that in. But
what kind of sauna? Do you guys electric sauna, or
we have a barrel like wet sauna, right? Is it a wet sauna?
Barrel.
Traditional Finnish sauna.
And then we have something called the plunge, by our friends at the Cold Plunge, which is just like a modern bathtub looking thing and it's always 45 degrees. It'll go colder, but we don't need it to.
But we can't take it.
The water circulates. So you jump into an ice bath, water doesn't move. Someone shakes the water, you curse them. This thing, the water's constantly moving, so it's gnarly. But one of the things so you can understand is that Juliet and I are under a fair bit of stress in our lives from the things that we're doing. And one of the things that we found out was that if we got hot and cold just one time before we went to bed, we fell asleep even faster. We walking all day long. We have been not drinking caffeine after noon. We're really trying to set up so that we see that the most important thing for us is that sleep. And yes, we can. I just went to Dallas for a conference and was getting like 4 hours of sleep 2 nights in a row because of travel and time and starts. It's okay. I'm going to have a couple days to wreck sleep. I'm going to have a couple days of catching up, and then I'll just get back on my routine. And what we have found is that when we really protect our sleep, and what Juliet found was that when she started tracking her sleep, it's common to actually have upwards of an hour of sleep disturbance a night. People don't realize that. So what they think is, I'm going to bed at 11, I'm getting up at 6, I'm getting 7 hours of sleep. You're not. You're getting 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah, like basically subtract an hour. Everyone, you don't need a device to tell you this.
At least an hour.
But just if you go with it, you just subtract an hour, right? And so if you want to get 7 hours of sleep, you need to be laying in bed for 8 hours. And that's really like a lost art for people.
So the people can actually take something away from this talk.
The one thing.
7 hours is your threshold for survivability. You'll go less than 7 and you'll kick ass for a while, but I guarantee you're not kicking butt the way you think you can. And you're actually sucking way more than you think. And it's a big strain on your body. You're not adapting to exercise. You're not making the best decisions. You're not as quick. You're not as lucid. 7 is your threshold for survivability. If you are trying to get better at something or consolidate learning or deal with skills or exercise, 8 is our magic number. 7 is you're like, oh boy, I've only been getting 7. I'll have to get 8 as soon as I can. Don't stress. Fight for 7. Go to bed early. Do what you got to do. 8 is the golden, and then you can adjust up and down from there. Somewhere between 7 and 8.5 is probably the magic.
Yeah, I definitely feel when I'm not getting optimal sleep very quickly. I'm very sensitive to it, and I become a cranky boy.
Yeah,
we both sleep with eye masks, so the room is black. We love an ice cold room. I discovered that I am the hottest sleeper on the planet, and discovered a company called Ooler, Ooler, and they make a device that circulates cold water underneath my feet all night long. And guess what? My bed is ice cold. Juliet, it's like the white wall. Juliet will not come over on my side. It is freezing. But what ends up happening is I don't wake up as much. So again, what I want people to hear is so many of the behaviors that we're engaged in are about trying to maintain the status quo of the human. And when suddenly you start dropping those things in, it's really easy.
So you guys are parents. You probably didn't grow up in this sort of healthy environment.
I think we did.
What do you guys? Oh, you did? Yeah.
Well,
maybe.
Go with your question. Go with your question.
Yeah. What did you guys do as parents? What do you guys do as parents to make sure that your kids are on this track, but also where you're not overbearing? So they are.
Oh, we're overbearing.
We're probably overbearing. We'll find. Well, I mean, what we like to tell everyone, John, is we'll know when our kids are 25 when they're in therapy, and then we'll learn the mistakes we made. But I think it started. I think the most important thing we did when they were babies is we understood the importance of sleep, and we protected their sleep like it was our job in life. I mean, that was, and we always laughed because when our kids would be 4, we have people say, wow, your kids are just so well behaved and they're so nice. And Kelly and I would kind of laugh to ourselves because we're literally it's nothing we're doing except for we protect the crap out of our kids' sleep. So our kids are literally just well rested, but because most kids are not well rested, it is this gigantic contrast. So, I mean, we really protected our kids' sleep. Again, we turned down social functions and we were literally our kid needs to take a nap. It needs to be a 2-hour nap. It needs to be in the dark room, and we're going to protect that. So, I mean, that was the first, I think, out of the gate, we respected their sleep and protected it.
That today, we still have rigid bedtimes for our 17-year-old and our 13-year-old.
No phones in the bedroom.
No phones or tech in the bedroom.
None.
you're not going to strip out Snapchat out of a kid's hands or TikTok these days. So quit pretending that that's going to be responsible. What you can do is say absolutely no phone in the bedroom so that you don't have to make a decision. There's that constrained behavior again, right? If my child is to say, well, I should sleep, but I'm going to get a text from my boyfriend at 2 a.m, I'm going to answer that text every time if I'm a 17-year-old. But if the phone isn't in the room,
there's no choice.
There's no choice.
Yeah. And then
Kelly's answering it.
The other thing that we've done is we've made like movement and exercise non-optional. So what is optional for them is what they want to do. And that is broad. I don't care whether they want to dance or play badminton or both our kids play water polo. Like literally the sky's the limit in terms of physical activity. But what's not, so they can choose what it is, but they can't choose that they have to do it. So that's kind of been the line we've drawn, because some kids are not team sports kind of kids. Some kids are individual sports. I mean, we don't care if it's jujitsu or mountain biking or dance I believe there is some exercise movement practice for everyone. I believe
the more fun and the more social it is, the better and
right.
more likely it's going to stick.
So I'm like, great. If you want to try dance, great. If you want to try this, great. Like try what you like, but what's not optional is you not moving. So we've kind of drawn that line. And I think that that's been good. Like it's, they've been able to discover what they like and how they like to move. And I actually feel really confident. Like we have a almost 17-year-old daughter. I think when she goes off and goes to college and becomes an independent adult, I feel very confident that she's gonna, really like be driven to continue an exercising practice because that's just been part of her life.
And our kids are skilled. They can all swing a kettlebell. Both of our kids can Olympic lift. They both know how to set up a workout so they can get a 20-minute couplet in. There's some basics. And you're smiling because that seems crazy, but it's no longer.
It's cool. I don't know how to do those things.
Exactly. And that's really an important part is when we have people come to us, we always acknowledge that people come out of a movement tradition or some kind of physical tradition or lack thereof. And you're only as good as your experience. And so if you may be starting from a deficit in terms of learning how to eat, learning how to self-soothe, learning how to manage your sleep. That's okay. Ultimately, we need to progress these conversations of base camp activities to our children. So by the time they go to become adults, they don't go to Starbucks and get a 1,500 calorie frappuccino for breakfast because that's not the best way to thrive as a human being. And it's not about that that's not delicious and you can't not have that as a dessert. You totally can. But we see is that adults basically have had zero training and zero experience in how to take care of themselves physically and psycho-emotionally. That is a problem.
Okay, and let me tell you one quick story, just since you sort of brought up how we were raised. I mean, we actually have like very physically active parents who are also very physically active older people now. But let me tell you a quick story about my dad, who is now 77. But 3 years ago, we invited my dad to go on a 16-day Grand Canyon rafting trip. Which is a really, really rigorous trip. I mean, in addition to the fact that you're rafting all day through big, huge rapids, you're sleeping on the ground every night. There's dust storms and sandstorms. And then one of the glories of going down the Grand Canyon is you do these epic, long, hot, straight uphill side hikes up these beautiful side canyons on the Grand Canyon. And we had a bunch of other friends that were more like in their 40s, our age, that were on the trip with us. And none of them could believe that my 77-year-old dad was able to do this trip because to a T, they all said, and this is multiple people, like this is a big group trip. Multiple people are like, my parents are in their 70s and couldn't even dream of doing a trip like this. So here's my dad who's able to go down 16 days on a really intense, awesome trip on the Grand Canyon with his kids and 2 granddaughters. When everybody else on the trip is like, there's absolutely no way my parents would have the capability to do that. So after the trip, I asked my dad, I said, Dad, what do you think it is? Like, why are you at 77 able to do this when none of my friends' parents would even dream of doing a trip like that at 77? And he kind of thought about it and he's like, well, probably part of it is genetics. But he said, but what I think it is that I have known that I need to keep moving my body my whole life. He always has exercised and hiked and walked and been physically active and religiously gone to the gym. And so I just thought it was interesting that, you know, like he distilled down a life of like, why is this guy able to be so functional at 77 years old when everybody else isn't? What does that say? You know, and he reduced it down to like, you got to move more. You just need to move your body more.
And with that, I can talk to y'all for hours and days, and y'all are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. But I think we're gonna end it with just a call to action. Move more, please.
Exactly. Move more.
And if you're like, I don't want to run, don't run. Get a backpack, put some cans in it, then do your same hike.
Yeah, some
whatever it is just move more.
Rucking. Yeah.
Yes.
No, you're making it technical. You don't have to ruck. I'm just saying walk with a backpack.
Walk with it. Or just pick up some weight, pick up a rock on the trail and just
carry it for 10 minutes up the hill and then put it down. Yeah. I mean, we have gotten so precious about this that we just want to remind people that the dividends this is compounding interest. And as you move out of your 20s and out of your early 30s, we suggest you start playing a game called durability, where you're saying, how do I maintain and enhance my function? Not how do I get shredded for Instagram? How do I, PR in my deadlift? Those things are cool. We love that too. But it's really about setting your goals so you can retire and play and play and play. Because that's ultimately what this is about.
Thank you. Where can people find more if they're interested? There's definitely the Ready State mobile app, but it's not called our
app is called Virtual Mobility Coach.
Yes,
so
Virtual
Mobility Coach.
Yeah.
On the internet, we are thereadystate.com, and then on all the social platforms, we are at the Ready State.
Perfect. I'm excited to meet y'all in person. Thank you so much for all your passion and all your knowledge. Can't wait for people to listen to this and for people to learn from it. So thank you both. And if you like what you listen to, please find the Virtual Mobility Coach and thereadystate.com and go move. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.